Conspiracy is a touchy subject. There are some people that listen to them just for entertainment's sake, and others who follow it like a religion. I personally tend to keep an open mind, but some theories are just so off the wall, I just have to laugh. I'm not going to go into details, but I can hear you asking why I'm opening my intro with a piece of conspiracies. Well, it's because this week I'm reviewing Area 51 on the PlayStation 2, a first-person shooter that has you playing as a specialist Ethan Cole investigating a mutant virus leak in a facility. Cole is a member of the hazmat team who needs to eliminate the mutant threat and quarantine the virus. Of course, the story is a lot more involved. The story is told in a few different ways. Before loading the next stage, you're usually given a cutscene, and other times Cole, voiced by the X-Files' own David Duchovny, because it wouldn't be a game around aliens without Duchovny, will narrate his thoughts over still images. I'm not too keen on this storytelling method. For one, having still images isn't exactly the most powerful and interesting thing to look at, and two, let's face it, I'm not a big fan of David Duchovny's monotone voice. Other things do help push the story along, though. And here's a minor spoiler alert, because even though it doesn't give too much away, and it's a major part of the game, somebody out there will bitch. Cole eventually does get infected by a large mutant creature, and can turn into this mutant form at will. But I mention this simply because as he's walking around, corpses can be possessed, pop up from the ground, and talk to Cole. I didn't know until I looked up the plot after playing the game, since I was fairly lost with what was going on about halfway through, but the person talking to you through these corpses is apparently some super old alien named Edgar, who is apparently voiced by Marilyn Manson. Huh, that's pretty cool. Anyway, the story is interesting in the beginning of the game, but I don't want to give away any plot twists, because I did enjoy it, at least while I was able to follow it. So yeah, the game is a FPS. You run around, completing multiple objectives while shooting alien forces. Enemies range from basic hand-to-hand creatures in the beginning of the game, to the same creatures that manage to figure out how to pick up a weapon. A short time later, you start fighting the more elite alien soldiers, who leave cool-looking light blue blood. Eventually, these aliens learn how to cloak themselves, and pick up more powerful weaponry that doesn't leave ammo for you to pick up. This is when the game starts getting a little bit more challenging, but I'll get to that later. Let's talk about your arsenal. There's not a huge variety of weapons that you'll find, and you'll be resorting to your assault rifle for probably 90% of the game. You start the game with a pistol, which is fairly accurate, and actually surprisingly powerful for a starting weapon. It is a nice backup gun. The assault rifle contains 30 rounds and is accurate if you zoom in a bit. Strangely, although the pistol has an iron sight and the rifle has a scope, there's no iron sight for it. It's a bit odd. The shotgun has power, but I tended to use it primarily for the few boss encounters I had. There is a sniper rifle that can fire pretty quickly, but it was a two-shot kill unless you aim for the head. There's an alien weapon that has a regenerating ammo stock of 50 rounds, and it fires in 3-round bursts, but it seemed to lack power, and I usually only used it when fighting those damn wall turrets. Finally, there's an alien explosive device that seemed to suck in enemies before exploding. But again, I hardly had a use for it. There are also two types of grenades, but other than those, there are no other weapons. It's a bit strange that there's only really a half dozen weapons you can use, but at the same time, it's nice to not have to juggle so many types of ammo to ensure you don't ever run out. One thing that the game does allow you to do is dual wield two of the weapons, the shotgun and the assault rifle. As useful as this is, it has two slight drawbacks. For one, you can't use the secondary feature. For the assault rifle, that means no zoom, and for the shotgun, no firing both barrels at once. Secondly, you can't reload these guns if you're dual wielding them. You can't even drop the actual weapon. So what I ended up doing is when I had about 6 rounds left in the assault rifles, I would just fire the bullets off so I can reload now instead of in a major firefight. It's a strange choice, but I guess it makes sense too. I will say though, if you pick up another weapon that would give you the dual wielding, it does reload for you, so you do have that. I will also say that ammo, for the most part, is pretty plentiful. But about 3/4 of the way into the game, you'll go through a stage or two where the enemies are using nothing but that alien weapon, in which ammo is unnecessary. You'll quickly run out of ammo for most of your weapons, especially if you're like me and use the assault rifle or pistol. So you'll be resorting to your infected form or that alien weapon. At least a few stages later, ammo starts showing up again, but it can be a difficult part of the game, and really, at this point, is when the challenge starts ramping up considerably. Let me talk about the controls quick. They're relatively easy to use, but there are a few buttons that I kept pressing that caused some issues. Triangle and circle cycle through your weapons. X interacts with things. Square throws a grenade, which I accidentally hit a few times when trying to interact with objects or switching weapons. I don't get it. I don't know why it happened. But the shoulder buttons are where I was a bit frustrated. R1 fires, no big deal. L1 and L2 jump and crouch, respectively. But R2 is used for the zoom. Okay, more accurately, it was a secondary option for the current weapon, so for over half of the guns, zoom. Felt just a little odd to press R2 to zoom in. I felt that R2 should have been used for grenades or crouching or something. It is something you do get used to, but it still felt uncomfortable regardless. I'm pretty sure other games did it too, so I don't know why I noticed it so much in Area 51. So now let's move on to your mutant side. When Cole gets infected, he's forced into a tutorial sort of level where the screen has an annoying red tint. The game does a good job explaining the perks of being a mutant. You seem to have a higher defense, and your melee hit is a 1 or 2 hit kill. You can also fling what looks to be large yellow bugs, called parasites in-game, which replenish a small portion of your health while draining your enemies. There are a few catches to this though. You have a yellow mutagen gauge. This is basically considered your infected life gauge. It will drain on its own when you have the infected portion activated. Using the projectile attacks will consume a chunk of it. And to replenish it, you can either find mutagen syringes or melee enemies while infected. Now, there are times when being a mutant has its uses, but these don't seem to really occur until near the end of the game. Overall though, I don't feel like being infected is terribly interesting. I was a bit worried because that tutorial stage is fairly boring. Thankfully, after that, you can press up on the D-pad to change at will. Again, it has its uses, but I still preferred being human. I do have a few nitpicky things to mention. A few of them are common things I mentioned in several others of my reviews, and will probably mention in future ones too. There are no subtitles, which bugs the shit out of me, because, like many games, this one has loud sound effects and the voiceovers and cutscenes, or even in the game themselves, are fairly subdued. Another problem is that there are no grenade markers. Thankfully, grenades in Area 51 aren't instant kills, although they still do a good chunk of damage, so this isn't a huge issue. The checkpoints are fairly sporadic too. At least the game lets you resume the game from any checkpoint in a game. So instead of choosing what level to play, you can choose the physical checkpoint. I like this option. There are some other things to discuss. For one, there's a lot of lore that can be scanned. In the first level of the game, you get some sort of hazmat scanner. By selecting this and then scanning things that are highlighted for you, it will add some background info to the data vault. By scanning certain amounts of these, you'll unlock secret messages. Personally, I didn't bother watching many of them, but maybe they could be interesting to you. The data vault stuff, on the other hand, was definitely more interesting to read. With the 90 optional items that you can scan within the world, you might think that you want to explore the atmospheric world, but that's not necessarily the case. In the beginning of the game, you'll be with the 3 other team members. You'll be given objectives by them as they're holding down the area. But here's the problem. They are going to be on your ass. They're constantly badgering you about completing that objective. So you're going to want to complete that mission quickly and get back to your team just so that they shut the hell up. So I definitely could have possibly missed a few pieces of intel just because I couldn't stand my team yelling at me. The graphics are pretty good for the game. You start out in the facility of Area 51 itself, and then start going into the depths of the research centers, warehouses, etc. Eventually, you do of course reach a UFO that you enter, and then the game goes from dark, mysterious rooms to brightly colored, lighted monitor-filled areas. You do get a flashlight on all weapons by pressing L3, but it honestly doesn't help too much in the darker areas. Looking at my notes and racking my brain, I think that's all I have for Area 51. Midway did a really good job with this game, and I enjoyed it. It's pretty lengthy, probably taking about a good 10 to 12 hours to complete it. It took me a few days of on and off playing to finish it, but as I said, I really did enjoy it. You can get it for pretty cheap, and it's worth picking up. But even better, if you do want to play it, I read that it was actually released as freeware on PC. Shit, I wish I knew about that before buying the PS2 version. Oh well, it was like $7, well worth it. In any case, the link is in the video description area. Final score? 8 out of 10. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.